So you're all very welcome along to yet another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast, and I'm your host, Matt Hurley. And a big weekend in the Hurling League and the Football League coming up. The Football League review show will be in the next episode of the podcast, but we're focusing on hurling in this episode here for the 4 games this weekend. Less hectic, I suppose, but still some big games to look forward to rather than the dead rubbers we had last weekend. I'm delighted to be joined here by Aaron Prendergast from Gaelic Fan TV to discuss this weekend's action. So, Aaron, how we've been over the last few days? I know football's been the be-all and end-all in your channel over the last few weeks, but the hurling, it's in the semi-finals. I suppose it's an opportunity for a trophy at the same time for these sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I suppose this is kind of when the hurling actually gets interesting. I think up until this point, there's a lot of shadow boxing between teams. There's games that don't really matter. You've got Westmeath and Laois again in the relegation battle. I think that happens nearly every year. You always kind of end up with the same sort of scenarios in the National Hurling League, and I know we've talked about it time and time again in terms of the restructuring that they need to do. It's probably a conversation for another day. But no, it's great. It's great that we're into the semi-finals. Like Tipperary, Limerick, what an exciting game that's going to be. 2 massive rivals. You think of these two down the years, and some of the big games that they've had. Although this game probably won't be as big as when they play each other in a Munster round robin in a couple of weeks' time. At the same time, it's a huge game, and it's a big game for Tipperary because, it's a massive chance to, I suppose, get their first win over Limerick under Liam Cahill, in his first game. Psychologically, it would be big for Tipperary. I don't think a defeat is that big of a problem for Limerick, but I think at the same time, from a Tip perspective, for some of these younger players who've come into the side, it's a massive, massive opportunity for them to get a win. And yeah, but looking forward to this weekend's games, it must be said.
Absolutely, yeah. And speaking of Limerick and Tipperary, that's the game we start on TJ Carr, 7:30 on Saturday evening. As you said, it's a mouth-watering clash. In fairness, like the Hurling League has been full of dead rubbers and, not so much great games. But this game is so intriguing because Limerick playing their second team, they still won 4 games out of 5. Tip 100% record, absolutely brilliant. But there's something playing on the back of Tip's minds, maybe that Wexford had a 100% record last year and then flattered to deceive against Waterford. So is there that kind of same feeling as there is with Wexford to Tip this year, or do you think this Tip team are much better?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, there's a lot of narratives at Tipperary. Like, you could look at Waterford last year under Liam Cahill as well, who had a sort of a similar trajectory where they, were flying in the league and went on to win the competition, and then obviously, had a very poor championship. And there's a lot of people looking at Tipperary, comparing them to that Waterford side, the way they play, like the intensity, pressing up the pitch, very total fast hurling, moving the ball quickly. They always look on it. There's a lot of comparisons there. So there probably is maybe some jeopardy of supporters, Tipperary supporters, and even Waterford fans watching will probably even remind Tipperary fans of what happened last year, and obviously Wexford fans as well, who had a flying league and then in the end didn't even get out of the round robin. So yeah, or they did get out of the round robin but didn't progress past the quarterfinals. So it's been a difficult one from for that kind of perspective. Teams who've done very well in the league in the last couple of years haven't done so well in the championship. But I think at the same time, like, it's for management and for Liam Cahill, like, winning silverware, winning trophies, that's the main thing they got to do. Even for Tipperary, there's probably not, like, if they weren't to get out around robin, it wouldn't be a disaster because of the quality teams that are in there. But I think at the same time, like, they are building, they are improving. Jason Ford's shooting the lights out. Jake Morris is scoring hat-tricks. Ger O'Connor looks in flying form as well. So, like, Tipperary are looking very, very good. And I think Limerick, although they've been resting quite a bit, I do get the feeling that they're already probably looking towards Munster now, and that's why I'd probably give the Tipperary the edge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Tipperary. Like, you look at Jake Morris 5-5 in 5 games, Conor Bowe 3-3, Mark Kehoe coming off the bench doing so well, John McGrath still going back to his form the last days. He scored 9 points in the league already this year. Even Sean Ryan chipping into 1-6, a relatively new player. And Jason Ford is one player that you have to focus on, really. Like, I think it's 2-13 from play. Incredible record. Like, we always noticed Jason Ford for his expert free taking, but he's added so much more to his game in this league campaign, even under Liam Cahill, who seems to be getting the best out of him.
He does, yeah. Like, and I suppose that was the thing with Tipperary, like in the last couple of years, under the likes of Declan Bonner and Liam Sheedy, is, can they evolve their game a bit more, and obviously bring through younger players, but keep, some of the existing players at their same heights. And to be fair to Jason Ford, like, he's probably been the most consistent Tipperary hurler of the last 4 or 5 years. He very rarely has a poor performance. He's always coming out of a game with at least 12 or 13 points. I know he's on freeze a lot of the time, so that probably racks up his scores, but yeah, he's been brilliant. He's been sharp, he's been quick, and he's been excellent. And obviously Jake Morris as well. Like, I mean, he's been outstanding for Tipperary. And Gerard O'Connor has been a player I've been impressed with as well. Like, I think he's been, as I was saying earlier, I think he's been very impressive from a Tipperary perspective. The likes of John Campion coming off the bench as well at different times. So yeah, like, it all looks rosy in the garden from a Tipperary perspective. And I think how quickly they've settled to Liam Cahill's style is also very impressive, because you don't know how it will work sometimes. Like, obviously a man who managed Waterford, will it click straight away? You don't really know. Will it take time? But they've had some big results, like winning away at Kilkenny, first time they'd won there in 20 odd years, beating the likes of Waterford as well. They've had some big results. But the only thing is, at the end of the day, like, Tipperary are judged on championships, they're judged on Munsters. They're not really judged on league titles. So it's one of them things. But I think for Liam Cahill, for his squad, for the group of players he's bringing in, it is very positive.
It is definitely. And Brian O'Mara, another very good player from centre back in this league campaign. Even Ronan Marr from full back, brilliant. And Tipperary have done absolutely brilliant in this league campaign. But Limerick have been outstanding over the last few years, and we know that. And maybe they've not been given the credit of the league that they deserve because of the success they've enjoyed. Like, I looked at their stats, are absolutely ridiculous in this league campaign, despite them not going at full throttle. 25 different scores. That's not a good sign for the rest of the country. Like, you look at players that didn't really, contribute to the last few years. You look at Adam English, for example, with 4 points, Shane O'Brien, 4 points, Donegal Dawling, who's been absolutely outstanding with 1-9, third top scorer for Limerick so far in the league. So they're all chipping in, even Tom Morrissey, Aaron Gallan coming back into the team for the last 2 games, and Dermot Burns as well, hurler of the year, let's not forget. So Limerick, they're adding to the squad, and it has the feeling that Limerick are just getting better rather than getting worse, which is not a good sign for the rest of the country.
Absolutely, yeah, because I think the one piece of silverware maybe over the last couple of years you'd look at and think, well, we definitely have a chance of winning that. It's the league, because obviously Limerick haven't, they've rotated heavily in the league in the last couple of seasons, and haven't been at the races in the league, and I think they only won 1 game in the end in the league last year, and that was against Westmeath. So they haven't really usually been at the races. The fact that they are this year probably is worrying in some respects, because it's not like, as you said, they've gone full throttle. Like, there's been time, Cian Lynch has come on here and there, but not featured heavily. Aaron Gallan's been in and out, and they've rotated heavily. Like, and as you said, Donegal O'Donnell's been fantastic. Richie English, Adam English as well. You've got the likes of Cathal O'Neill, contributing as well. Like, so from a Limerick perspective, like, they I think the most impressive thing about them this year so far is their squad. And when you look at a lot of people who've compared them to Dublin's 6 in a row and everything else, you can see, validation to it, because like, they were missing Cian Lynch for an entirety of the championship last year, and yet they still went on to win the All-Ireland, when almost every team they played against them raised their game and probably had one of their best performances of the year. So, like, that's the thing with Limerick, is that, like, say if Aaron Gallan was missing for the championship, I'd still have them favourites. Like, if Jeremy Burns was missing, still have them favourites. Like, you take, like, all their players are unbelievable, some of the best in the country, but you could take 1 or 2 players out and replace them, and the levels wouldn't drop. The standards are all across the team. Like, I think if you put Limerick's second team into the Munster round robin, they'd probably be second to Limerick's first team. Like, they're that good at the minute, and they just have so many options. Like, as we've seen last year, getting to an under-20 All-Ireland final, like, they're continuously bringing through young players, and that's the thing, is that, like, Limerick are not slowing down, and this isn't just a case of a golden era. It is a golden era, but I think it's a golden era that, it's a bit like when Kilkenny burst onto the scene under Brian Cody. Like, they'd won a good few All-Irelands before that, but they hadn't had like a huge amount of just utter domination for like 10, 15 years. And I think that's what we're seeing now at Limerick.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable to think that one of them 25 players aren't even goalkeepers. So when you think about it, two goalkeepers make the squad, like all of them 25 players won't even make the Limerick squad come championship time. That's incredible. And they have more to add, like the under 20s to come in as well. And yeah, and like Aidan O'Connor was one of them under 20s. He's even got a point from a free, So like they're all coming up through the ranks. It's absolutely brilliant to see from a Limerick point of view, not for the point of view for the rest of the country. But despite Limerick having all that power, you'd expect Tip to win it.
Yeah, I think so. Like I just think it is a hard one to call, and could Limerick go into championship mode for this game and maybe not play their absolute best, but nick a result and maybe it goes to extra time, they go on to win it. It is a hard one to call, because if you're given a prediction in the championship, you're saying Limerick all day long. And we know Limerick, when they have their starting 15, and even with their squad, they're good enough to beat Tipperary. But I think Tipperary, like they're motoring well. Jason Ford, Jake Morris in flying form. Shamie Callan coming back, making the odd appearance off the bench. As we said, some younger lads sort of making the step up. Gerard O'Connor, Alan Connolly, these guys, like Owen Connolly, I should say. Like there's players there that are coming in, making the step up. Connor Bowe as well as another one who's impressed. So yeah, I fancy Tipperary. I just think that this game will mean more to them than it will mean to Limerick. So I'll go with Tipperary by 3 points.
It's going to be a tight one, all right. And I suppose it does depend on Limerick's attitude. And yeah, for an early prediction, I'd probably go for Tip as well. They're motoring along very nicely. And Limerick might be motoring along to the Munster Championship. And that's, again, not a good sign for the rest of the country. And you'd still have to believe Limerick are All-Ireland favourites even at this early stage. Like in football, it's kind of a situation where it's so close. But with hurling, it's kind of a situation where we know what's going to happen at the end. But we'll have to wait and see as the summer goes on. And the other semi-final is between Kilkenny and Cork, Nolan Park, 4 p.m, TG Carr on Sunday. This is an interesting one because like Kilkenny weren't at their best against Waterford the other day. Like Waterford, if they took a few chances in the first half, they could have easily put away Kilkenny. And as for Cork, like they had the job done last weekend against Clare. It was safe to say that. They already qualified. So it's an interesting game, this one. Both sides wanting to go further into the championship than they've already been. And Cork, for example, haven't won the league, I think, since the 90s. So it's a trophy on the line, and I think both teams will be up for it.
Yeah, like I think if you're asking me like which county does this competition mean the most to right now, I think Cork, as you said, like it's a incredible statistic that they haven't won this competition. I think early 2000s or late 90s or something of that nature. It's just mental, absolutely mental. We all know Cork's history as a county in terms of winning major honours, and obviously they're on their longest serving drought in terms of an All-Ireland championship at the minute. And for a county like Cork, it's incredible how it's got to that point. So I think it's huge. It's absolutely huge that they get this silverware, because let's not forget they were in the league semi-finals last year and obviously made the final and were hammered by Waterford. I think squad-wise, they've one of the best in the country. They've so many options all across the pitch, but I think they do need to step up now, and now is the time really to kick on and pick up major silverware. But from a Kilkenny perspective, like I think Derek Ling has quietly done a good job there. Like obviously the defeat to Tipperary was a bit of a setback at home as well. It's a result that maybe we wouldn't have seen under Brian Cody, but Billy Drennan, since coming up from the under-20s, has been outstanding. One of the top scorers in the championship. Mossy Keown has really delivered as well. Porrick Walsh has been good. On Cody's came back a little bit. We haven't seen TJ Reid. So like Kilkenny have looked very, very strong in that sense, in terms of, they've been able to kick on and bring through the likes of the Billy Drennans, Mossy Keown establishing himself, more Porrick Walsh, Dara Corcoran. So yeah, it's a fascinating game for both sides. And Kilkenny are probably going under the radar because Cork are favourites. But yeah, this is a very tough one to call.
It is, yeah. And like going back to Cork for a minute, like you look at them, the players are actually out injured. Patrick Horgan and Robbie O'Flynn, as far as I know, are both injured. So that's two huge losses that definitely would be in the team for the championship. Like Shane Barrett is doing well at the moment. Conor Lehan, Declan Dawson. Declan Dawson did do well against Galway, but has struggled in the last few games, which could be a worry. Shane Kingston's done well. But the worry with Cork, like in the last few games, like yes, against Limerick and Galway, especially the second half against Limerick, Cork were absolutely brilliant and they blew Limerick out of the water in that half. And it's a big but, like in the last few games against Westmeath, where they lost the second half in Parky Heath, against Wexford, where to be honest, I was watching the full game and Cork should have lost it. And Clare, well, we might not read too much into Clare, but at the same time, like Clare were probably the better team on the day, and Cork maybe nicked the draw. So is that kind of a worrying trend for Pat Ryan that his team aren't performing well? I know they're getting the results, but like the performances aren't particularly there.
Yeah, like I suppose that was an issue obviously under Kieran Kingston the last couple of years as well, was that Cork were sort of struggling to see out games. They were struggling, and they'd have brilliant moments in games, but then they'd have other moments in games where for 10, 15 minutes they'd completely switch off and they'd allow the opposition to come back into it. And then they have been quite strange at times, because there's been other moments where they've started very, very poorly and then had to drag the entire game back. Like obviously against Limerick, we remember the opening game, first half, Limerick were brilliant. Cork just weren't in the game at all. And then in the second half, completely switched and turned it around. So yeah, like I don't think we've seen Cork perform consistently brilliant for a full 70 minutes. And there probably has been an element of Cork maybe looking further ahead towards the championship as well. But as you said, like the likes of Conor Cahalane, Brian Hayes in round, in that side as well. Declan Dalton, some of the injuries that they've had has been very disappointing from a Cork perspective. So, like they're going strong, and like I think when you look at Cork, you look at their underage success. Obviously, with Pat Ryan coming in, I think a lot of us now are expecting Cork to kick on and challenge for an All Ireland. It's hard to know whether they're at that level, but I think they need to go out and win this game and win this trophy, because, as I said, like Tipperary won an All Ireland a couple of years ago, and like they're a young enough side, first year of management they're building. I know it's Pat Ryan's first year in management as well, but at the same time, like are Cork going to win the Munster Championship? I don't think they are. They're not going to win the All Ireland, I don't think, because of Limerick. So you need to build silverware, get yourself a trophy, because it will stand to you. Maybe not this season, but next season, and that's why I think it's huge for Cork.
It is a huge game for Cork in that sense, and it probably isn't for Kilkenny if you're talking about the same sense, because you look at the Leinster Championship, it's probably themselves in Galway. No disrespect to Dublin and Kilkenny whatsoever, or Dublin and Wexford, should I say. Like Kilkenny have done well all over, not just in scoring terms, but Padraig Walsh has been really impressive at cornerback for Kilkenny. Richie Reid hasn't played most games, and like he's still to come into the team. Cian Kenny's moved back to wing back as well. Like you have Ian Tallis and Owen Murphy, who are quietly doing well in goal as well. So Kilkenny are building a nice squad, and let's not forget, Limerick obviously got to the under-20 final last year, but Kilkenny won the whole thing with Billy Drennan up front, delivering completely. You still have Walter Walsh going along on the bench. Paddy Deegan's moved up to the forwards as well. Paddy Mullen has done well in midfield. So Kilkenny are building a nice squad under Derek Lee.
They definitely are, right? Like, and as we said, with some of the new lads that have come in, like Billy Drennan's been extremely impressive. As you said, Padraig Walsh, really kicking on. Cian Kenny, Dara Corcoran at times as well. Conor Fogarty's always been a player I've been impressed with. So, like, Kilkenny, they're going very, very strong. Again, it's hard to judge with Derek Lynn coming in, and we probably won't know how much has changed since Brian Cody when we see them in the Leinster round robin. And that's why it is hard to fully judge them and judge what level they're at. But yeah, I think things have gone well. They've got to a league semi-final. They probably are, looking towards that Leinster round robin. But again, like if you can end the season with a league title and a Leinster championship, regardless of what happens in the All Ireland series, you look at that as a very good year for Derek Ling for his first season. So that's why maybe it's like it probably means more for Cork, but I think at the same time, from a Kilkenny perspective, and for Derek Ling, they want to get silverware, want to pick up as many trophies as possible. And what better way to do it than beating, Cork, a big rival, like, and turning them over. And I think the criticism maybe of Kilkenny is how do they fare against Munster teams a lot of the time, when you look at it last year against Limerick, obviously in the final beating that day. And obviously, as we've seen, beat by Tipperary in the league as well. So, the Munster level seems a lot higher. I know Kilkenny still got to the All-Ireland final last year, and obviously beat Clare in the semi-finals. But I think at the same time, you do look at the Munster sides as a higher level. So I think from a Kilkenny perspective, psychologically, a win would be huge as well, you know?
It definitely will, yeah. And let's not forget that Cork beat Kilkenny at this stage last season, so maybe there's a bit of vengeance on Kilkenny's minds. But seeing as the league means more to Cork, you think that will push them over the line, or will the home advantage suit Kilkenny?
Yeah, it's a very, very hard one to call. Like, I suppose, as you said, like, home advantage for Kilkenny, you know, obviously they lost to Tipperary in Nolan Park earlier in the year, but very rarely do they get beat there. They're always very strong there. Yeah, I just think Cork have been that bit more consistent. Kilkenny, even looking at some of their performances, like we're fairly poor against Tipperary, like I said. Even against Antrim on the opening day. On another day, Antrim could have beat them. You know, there was only 4 or 5 points between them that day. So Kilkenny haven't quite, and it's probably, as you said, because we haven't seen a lot of their players come back yet. Obviously, there's been club commitments with players playing for Ballyhale and everything else. We haven't quite seen all those lads fully back into the side. A lot of those players have got an extended break, and rightly so. So Kilkenny probably aren't, quite there just yet. So yeah, I fancy Cork to get the win. I think narrowly, probably by a point.
Yeah, I'd probably say so as well. I think Cork should have enough in this game, and probably means more to them. So both of our predictions would suggest a Cork and Tipperary final. Look, judging by Tipperary's form, you'd have to back Tip to go on and win the league, especially if they beat Limerick on Saturday.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think psychologically, like to get a win over Limerick, 5 wins from 5. Yeah, I'd fancy Tipperary. Like, I think they're going very strong under Liam Cahill at this moment in time. Some of the wins have been very impressive, like I said, and getting the best out of Jason Ford and Jake Morris, and still have a lot more experienced lads to settle back into the side as well. So yeah, like, I think it's a tough one, because I think in a one-off game, I think Cork are actually better, but I think Tipperary are in better form. There's a better feeling around them under Liam Cahill. So I'd give Tipperary the edge, but I think at the same time, we'll see what happens in these games. And if Cork go out and beat and blitz Kilkenny by 5 or 10 points, then you're looking at it and thinking, okay, maybe Cork are favourites here. But at this moment in time, I have Tipperary as the favourites.
Yeah, I probably do so as well. Like Cork, there's an element. Even in the Waterford game last year, they just implode at times, and you'd probably have to back Tipperary for that particular reason. And before we leave the hurling and go into the football episode, we'll discuss the last 2 hurling games, the big hurling games of the weekend. It's the relegation playoff, as you mentioned earlier in the chat. Westmeath against Laois in Thurles, 2 o'clock on Saturday on TG or YouTube. It's live there, so it's great to see they're getting the exposure there. Westmeath, like they've performed well despite getting hammerings, inevitably in Division 1A, to be honest with you. Killian Doyle is out for this game, I believe. He scored 30 points of Westmeath's tally so far, but they still have Noel O'Brien and Kieran Doyle, who's doing pretty well, Robbie Greville as well, and David Lennon. And as for Laois, they're very reliant on Stephen Picky-Barr for scores. He scored 36 points in the league campaign. Roy Milani's done well at centre-back. So it's an interesting game, this Laois. Let's not forget our Joe McDonough this season, while Westmeath are Liam McCarthy. So do you think that'll swing the pendulum to Westmeath, that they're on a higher level?
Yeah, I think it should do. Like, I think when you look at when you look at the trajectory of these two sides over the last couple of years, as we've said, like these two teams tend to play each other either in a relegation playoff, a Joe McDonough Cup final, or in the Leinster round. Like these two always seem to be somewhat connected, and they're kind of at that weird limbo between not good enough as a Liam McCarthy side, but again they're probably a little bit better than Joe McDonough level. So it's kind of, and it's the same in the National League as well, where these sides are always going up and going down, or something around that nature. But as you said, I think Westmeath have probably shown more progress over the last 2 years. As you said, Killian Doyle's injury is going to be huge, that's a massive loss. And Laois have a lot of great players, like you said, Stephen Picky-Mark, Porrick Purcell, they've James Duggan's another young and exciting fresh player as well. So Laois they have good players there, but they just haven't quite been able to dig out results against the bigger sides. There's been times where you think they're going to do it and they don't. And it's been somewhat similar to Westmeath at times. You think of the Wexford draw last year, but yeah, like in terms of this one, I probably would edge towards Westmeath. I think they are just a bit further ahead than Laois right now, but it's very close, and it's a hard one to call, and extra time and possibly even more could be called upon here.
Yeah, definitely. So it's going to be very interesting. I think the fact that Kildare is out maybe levels the playing field a small bit. But I just think Westmeath should be too strong as well to win this game, and they should survive in Division 1. And the last game we're going to talk about briefly is Offaly against Kerry, Division 2A semi-final on at 2 o'clock on Saturday. This is the opportunity to play Kildare, and congratulations to them for finishing first in Division 2A, an outstanding achievement for David Herity and his team. But Kerry already guaranteed third before last weekend. Offaly obviously drawing against Kildare, which wasn't enough to get to the first place. Offaly beat Kerry in the actual league campaign. So judging by the fact of that, and they're at home, you have to back Offaly to win the game, despite Kerry's recent run in the Joe McDonagh over recent years.
Yeah, like I think Kerry are one of those sides that have probably slightly overachieved in the last couple of years. I think they've a lot of great hurlers like Shane Conway and Mikey Boyle, these lads, Porrick Boyle, who've done very well. But I think when you look at Offaly and you look at the underage, the players that they are bringing through, some of the standards that are in Offaly hurling or should be there. I do think Offaly are better, but at the same time, Kerry, you have to give them so much credit because they keep coming back. And last year we thought they're not gonna go at it again and make another Joe McDonagh Cup final, and then they do. And here they are again in another league semi-final. Like, they're always pushing up towards the top end of the table. You would wonder at some point, are they finally going to crack the code and get over the line? I think the problem, as you said, is that there's a lot of other teams that are improving and getting better. Like Kildare reaching the final is incredible. Probably now one of the favourites for the Joe McDonagh possibly as well. And yeah, like Offaly obviously beat Kerry by a point, in Fitzgerald Stadium, and it was a very close game. And Offaly just getting the better of Kerry on that day. But yeah, I'd fancy Offaly to come through it. But I don't know. I do have a sneaky feeling about Kerry at the same time, though. They're one of those sides that you love to write off, but always come back to bite you. So yeah, do you know what? I'll go for Kerry. Why not?
Jeez, a bold prediction there. Yeah, I'd love Kerry to do well. Obviously, like, their hurlers to do well and take some attention off the footballers. Obviously, they have a soccer team as well, so it's great that so many sports are in Kerry. But yeah, 3 finals of the road, that'll take the stuffing out of Kerry, to be honest with you. I hate to see it happen, but as you said, other teams are getting better. And Laois are in the Joe McDonagh Cup this year, who held their own a small bit of Division 1, and they're coming down to that competition. You have Offaly, you have Kildare, Down, who are still decent enough as well. Carlow, they can't be as bad as they are in the league. Like, they have decent players as well. So it's only a matter of time, I think, before Kerry slip up. And in this game, yeah, I'd probably go for Offaly myself. I'm not going to go for as daft a prediction as yourself, Aaron. I'm going to go Offaly. I'd say Owen Cahill, who's the top scorer in Division 2A or lower with 57 points. I think he's the guy to lead them to victory. David Nally with 210 as well. A very good record. And yeah, the next episode we'll talk about the football, and so stay tuned for that.